President Woodrow Wilson's idealism significantly shaped American intervention in World War I. Wilson envisioned the war as an opportunity to reshape the global order. His 14 points, a set of principles outlining the path to lasting peace, were central to this vision. These points called for an end to secret treaties, self-determination for nationalities, and arms reduction. At its core, Wilson believed that democracies wouldn't wage war against each other, and that promoting democracy worldwide would prevent future conflicts. This idealistic vision, often referred to as making the world safe for democracy, became a cornerstone of American foreign policy for decades to come. The United States positioned itself as a champion of freedom and democracy, distinct from imperialistic powers. This self-image persists to this day. The war's conclusion arrived in November 1918. Recognizing their defeat, the German High Command sought an armistice based on Wilson's 14 points, a more favorable outcome than the harsh terms proposed by France and Britain. The armistice agreement was reached on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, a detail etched in collective memory as a symbol of the war's end. Tragically, the actual fighting continued for those final 5 hours. Both sides, aware of the impending ceasefire, launched offensives in a last-ditch effort to gain territory. This resulted in a senseless loss of life, with estimates suggesting over 11,000 casualties in those final hours. This horrifying episode underscores the destructive potential of human conflict, a sentiment captured in Albert Einstein's famous remark, "There are two things infinite, the universe and human stupidity, and I'm not sure about the universe." President Wilson's idealism clashed with the realities of European power politics at the Paris Peace Conference. Hailed as a hero upon his arrival in France, Wilson made two crucial missteps. Firstly, he excluded Republican leaders from the American delegation. This bipartisan approach had been a hallmark of U.S. foreign policy, and its absence would later undermine domestic support for the Treaty of Versailles. Secondly, Wilson's focus on his 14 points overshadowed other priorities. Two key points, national self-determination and free trade, proved particularly problematic for the European powers. National self-determination, the idea that nationalities should govern themselves democratically, threatened the colonial empires of Britain and France. They were unwilling to relinquish control of vast territories that provided them with economic and political advantage. Similarly, unrestricted free trade, championed by the United States, clashed with the mercantilist interests of the European powers. They viewed colonies as economic assets, sources of raw materials and captive markets for their goods. Unrestricted free trade would disrupt this system, benefiting the burgeoning American industrial sector at their expense. These fundamental disagreements between Wilson's idealism and the European desire for punishment and spoils ultimately weakened the Treaty of Versailles, setting the stage for future international conflict. Collective security emerged after World War I as an alternative to the balance of power system, which had failed to prevent the war. The core principle is that an attack on one member nation is considered an attack on all. This creates a deterrent effect, discouraging aggression as potential attackers face the prospect of collective resistance. Imagine a group of friends agreeing to come to each other's defense if bullied. This collective approach strengthens the security of each individual member. However, collective security also presents challenges. Enforcing it requires member states to commit troops and resources to defend others, potentially against their own self-interest. The League of Nations, founded after World War I, embodied the concept of collective security. However, the League's effectiveness was hampered by the reluctance of powerful members, particularly the United States, to fully commit to its principles. The United States Constitution presents a specific hurdle for American participation in collective security arrangements. The power to declare war rests with Congress, not the President. Membership in a collective security pact could entail automatic military entanglement in conflicts not approved by Congress, raising concerns about violations of American sovereignty. This tension between collective security and congressional war-making authority would continue to shape U.S. foreign policy in the decades to come. President Wilson faced significant opposition to the Treaty of Versailles upon his return to the United States. A key criticism stemmed from his decision to exclude Republican leaders from the negotiations. This bipartisan approach had been a tradition in American foreign policy, and its absence fueled partisan opposition to the treaty. Furthermore, many Americans, including some Democrats, expressed concerns about the League of Nations, the treaty's centerpiece. The League embodied the principle of collective security, which some saw as an infringement on American sovereignty. The Constitution vests the power to declare war in Congress, and membership in the League raised concerns about the automatic entanglement of the U.S. in conflicts not approved by Congress. Ultimately, the Senate failed to ratify the Treaty of Versailles. The United States negotiated separate peace treaties with Germany and Austria, but remained outside the League of Nations. This decision weakened the League from its inception and undermined Wilson's vision of a lasting peace. The absence of the United States, a powerful industrial nation, limited the League's ability to enforce its decisions and ultimately contributed to its failure to prevent World War II. The end of World War I saw the victorious powers convene at the Paris Peace Conference to dismantle empires and redraw national boundaries. The underlying assumption was that nations could be created through lines drawn on a map. While convenient for the imperial powers seeking to preserve their influence, this approach produced artificial states like Czechoslovakia, whose existence would prove to be short-lived. This hubris in nation-building is starkly evident in the Middle East. The Ottoman Empire, which had held vast territories for centuries, was dissolved. New nations like Syria, Lebanon, Palestine, and Iraq were arbitrarily created. Iraq provides a particularly stark example. It existed under Ottoman rule not as a unified country, but as a collection of regions dominated by Kurds, Sunnis, and Shiites. These groups, with long histories of mutual animosity, were lumped together under the banner of Iraqi by Western powers. The legacy of such imposed divisions is profound. The resulting unrest would necessitate strongmen like Saddam Hussein, whose repressive regimes papered over the artificial unity. When the United States invaded Iraq in 2003, one of its stated goals was to defend the Iraqi nation from a dictator. The problem was there was no cohesive Iraqi nation to defend, only a fiction inherited from colonial mapmaking. This ignorance of historical and on-the-ground realities is not unique to Iraq. Similar disregard for ethnic and cultural boundaries can be seen in the borders of many African nations. The divisions created to serve colonial ambitions continue to fuel unrest and conflict throughout both Africa and the Middle East. The Treaty of Versailles, therefore, stands as a cautionary tale about the destructive consequences of redrawing borders with a cavalier disregard for the realities of history, culture, and identity.
Please proceed to answer the questions in the assignment on Canvas. If you have any questions, you can post them in the open forum discussion or contact the professor using Canvas email.